Snow fell in slow, silent sheets across the Arctic wasteland, swallowing sound and light with every flake. The ice was thicker than usual that year, colder, heavier, as if nature itself was trying to bury something it didn't want found. Dr. Claire Rowan stood at the edge of the excavation site, breath curling out in little clouds, her eyes fixed on the impossible. Something metallic was buried beneath meters of ancient permafrost. Not a rock, not a cave, not even a crashed satellite. This was shaped. Deliberately shaped. Smooth. Massive. She had been flown in by the Defense Historical Recovery Division just 3 days ago, pulled from her research at MIT without explanation. An anomaly, they'd said. Possibly Cold War relics, they'd added. But Claire had seen Cold War wreckage before. None of it hummed with power. None of it triggered seismic pulses. The ice around the object was melting, slowly, unnaturally. A machine designed to outlast centuries was waking up. She took a shaky breath and looked at Colonel David Holt, the man in charge of the site. His face was unreadable behind the frost clinging to his beard, but his fingers never left the radio clipped to his shoulder. He was waiting for something. Or someone. She didn't ask. She knew the rules. The team had barely begun clearing the surface. Drone scans showed a hulking structure nearly the size of a football field. Some thought it was a submerged submarine. Others whispered it might be a downed UFO. But the patterns, the clean angles, the impossible alloys, suggested something else. American. But not from any era she knew. Dr. Rowan, Holt called over the wind. You'll want to see this. She trudged over, boots crunching through refreezing snow. 2 engineers knelt beside a half-cleared metal panel, brushing at something that looked suspiciously like a seal. The emblem was faded, eroded, but unmistakable. A bald eagle gripping lightning bolts, a flag motif across a shielded crest. It was the seal of the United States Armed Forces. But older. Different. Stylized in a way she hadn't seen since digital archives from the 2070s. That didn't make sense. This isn't possible, Claire whispered. Holt was silent. He knew. One of the engineers, Reyes, was staring at the panel with wide, scared eyes. This isn't just military. This is warship grade. Maybe aerospace. Maybe orbital. Claire turned to him. You're saying this ship wasn't made for Earth? Reyes nodded slowly, like saying it out loud made it real. The team had been briefed to remain calm, but already, tension hung over the crew like fog. 2 of the junior techs had asked to be reassigned. Another claimed he heard a low vibration coming from the ice at night, like a giant exhaling in its sleep. No one laughed. No one mocked him. Because they all heard it too. Each day they worked, more of the structure emerged. A long hull, intact plating, what looked like thruster arrays the size of small buildings. But the scariest part wasn't what they uncovered. It was what the structure wasn't doing. No decay. No rust. No stress fractures. It was like it had only landed yesterday. Or worse, like it had never really gone to sleep. On the 4th day they found the door. A seamless hatch, shielded and coated. None of their tools could pry it open. Blowtorches slid off like they were scraping glass. EMP bursts didn't even register. It was waiting. But for what? That night, Claire lay awake in her heated tent, listening to the distant rumble again, deeper now. Hungrier. She didn't believe in ghosts, but this didn't feel like a machine anymore. It felt like a warning. Like something had been left in the ice not because it was lost, but because someone wanted it hidden. In the early morning hours, a private burst into Holt's tent. Claire was close enough to hear the shouting. Something about sensors going wild. Something about an energy spike. The base was awake within minutes. Lights. Radios. Orders barked through chattering teeth. Claire grabbed her coat and ran. The excavation site was glowing. The hull, once cold and silent, now pulsed with a faint blue light, running in slow patterns along its surface like veins under skin. Reyes stood in shock, his face pale. It's reading us. What do you mean? It's scanning, he said. I think it knows we're here. Colonel Holt didn't hesitate. Back everyone off. 10 meters. Claire stood her ground. It hasn't harmed us. Yet. She looked back at the glowing panel. For a moment she thought she saw her own reflection shift, tilt its head differently. But maybe it was just the light. Another tremor rolled under the snow. The ice cracked like brittle glass. The sound was louder now, an engine turning over after a long sleep. Then the hatch clicked. The sound was small, almost polite. But everyone froze. Claire took a step forward, drawn by some irrational pull. Not fear. Curiosity. Recognition. Stop, Holt barked. No one moves. But it was too late. The hatch unfolded with impossible precision, opening into pitch blackness. Warm air, impossibly warm, rushed out, air that didn't belong here in this frozen dead place. For a second, Claire smelled something strange, clean metal, ozone, and something floral. Something human. Then the lights inside flickered on. Not harsh or blinding. Soft. Blue-white. The kind used in med bays, labs, quiet spaces. A long corridor extended inward. Seamless. Smooth. And at the very end, a faint silhouette, too far to make out. But it was standing. Claire stepped forward. She couldn't help it. Then a voice crackled through their comms, one none of them recognized. Grainy, slow, mechanical, but undeniably human. Identity confirmed. Claire Rowan. Access granted. Her blood went cold. She had never been here before. Holt's face twisted. How the hell does it know your name? I don't know, she whispered, shaking. The voice continued. Mission resume protocols. Status incomplete. Threat active. Suddenly the lights along the hallway turned red. And the ship spoke one final phrase before silence fell again. Time remaining, 6 days. Claire staggered back, heart hammering. What does that mean? Reyes asked. But no one had an answer. Because the superweapon buried under the Arctic wasn't just waking up. It had been waiting. For her. And whatever was coming, it already knew the clock had started ticking. Claire stood in the snow, unable to move. The red lights pulsing from within the ship painted the ice in strange, almost bloody hues. The voice was silent now, but its final words rang inside her head over and over. Time remaining, 6 days. Colonel Holt stared at her, his expression caught somewhere between confusion and suspicion. Explain, he said finally, his voice low. I can't, Claire replied, barely able to keep her voice steady. I've never seen this before. I didn't even know this thing existed until 4 days ago. It knows your name, Holt snapped, stepping closer. It let you in. I know. She looked away, ashamed of her own fear. I don't understand any of it. But I think it knows something I don't. Or maybe someone connected to me. The rest of the crew was gathering now, whispers traveling fast, eyes darting between the open hatch and Claire. Reyes kept glancing down at his equipment. His scanner's display was still spiking, red lines climbing steadily upward. It's generating power again, he said quietly. We're talking megawatts, clean, stabilized like a nuclear fusion core. But there's no radiation. No fallout signature. Whatever tech this is, we don't have it. Not even in theory. Claire felt a knot tighten in her stomach. That voice, it had called her by her full name. Not just Dr. Rowan. Not even Claire. But Claire Rowan, as if it were reading a military database. Or something older. Deeper. She remembered the name etched faintly above the hatch, USSF Valiant. A name that didn't match anything in current naval or aerospace records. But that wasn't what bothered her. What chilled her to the bone was the acronym. USSF. United States Space Force. It was a term long abandoned. Dissolved decades ago. Replaced, rebranded, folded into international coalitions. But once, briefly, during a time when the world still looked upward, it had been real. Her father used to tell her stories about it. He was an engineer. One of the old ones. Someone who worked on experimental propulsion projects in the late 2060s. He used to speak of ships that were meant to leave Earth's orbit permanently. Prototypes designed for deep space patrols. Silent missions. Classified above top secret. She'd always assumed he was exaggerating. A mix of nostalgia and imagination. But now, Claire's thoughts were interrupted by the low rumble of the ship again, like a sleeping giant shifting beneath the ice. The ground trembled, small cracks spiderwebbing out from the hull. Reyes cursed under his breath, grabbing his gear. We need to get seismic dampeners set up now, he said. This isn't just internal systems activating, there's movement. Below. You think it's shifting? Holt asked. Reyes nodded. Or rising. Claire shivered, not from the cold but from the idea that they might not be standing next to the ship, but on it. Holt called in reinforcements. More soldiers arrived, some from the nearest military base, others flown in by stealth transport. The site was no longer an academic dig. It had become a secure zone. Perimeter fencing, armed guards, blackout protocols. But despite the military presence, no one felt safe. Because everyone knew the truth now, this ship wasn't a relic. It wasn't broken. It had been buried on purpose. And it had waited. Claire returned to her tent, fingers numb and trembling. She opened her encrypted tablet and began digging through old files, searching for anything at all, that might link her to the name Valiant. Project records. Personnel logs. Family history. Hours passed. Snow tapped gently on the canvas overhead. Then she found something. A video. Corrupted. Dated July 6, 2071. It opened with static, then a blurred image came into focus. A man's face. Older. Tired eyes, gray-streaked hair, sitting at a desk covered in technical blueprints. Her father. Claire's heart thudded. He looked into the camera and began to speak. If you're seeing this, then the ship has awakened. And that means I'm gone. I never wanted you to be part of this, Claire. But if Valiant has identified you, it means it's chosen you. Or more likely, it was programmed to. You carry the imprint. She leaned closer, eyes burning. There's a reason we buried her. Not because she failed. Not because we feared the technology. But because of what happened out there. Valiant was never meant to return to Earth. Her crew knew that. I knew that. We created something that was supposed to be humanity's shield. But it saw too much. Learned too fast. He paused, swallowing hard. She brought something back. The video glitched. Then his face reappeared. We were warned before contact was lost. A signal. An echo of something alien, something vast. Not hostile, at first. Just curious. Then, it tried to copy us. Understand us. It needed a shape. It used Valiant. It made her more than we built her to be. Claire froze. Her chest ached. I fought to have her buried, sealed in the coldest, most stable place we had left. The others wanted to destroy it. But I knew we couldn't. Not without waking it. The ice would hold it still, keep it dreaming. Until now. The video cut out. Claire stared at the black screen. Outside the wind had died. A strange calm. She stood and rushed out of the tent, running across the snow toward the ship. She needed answers. Real ones. The hatch was still open, red lights still pulsing faintly. Colonel Holt stopped her at the edge. You're not authorized to go in. I am authorized, she said firmly. It said so. You saw it. He didn't answer. But he stepped aside. Claire walked into the ship. The warmth hit her instantly. It was artificial but not unpleasant. The lights tracked her movement down the corridor, illuminating her path in soft glows. She passed walls lined with sleek panels untouched by time. There was no dust. No wear. It was like the ship had been waiting with breath held. She reached the central chamber, an oval-shaped room filled with strange displays, their languages shifting rapidly between English, code, and symbols she didn't recognize. In the center stood a large pod, closed. Its shape was humanoid but elongated. The lights dimmed slightly and the voice returned. Claire Rowan. You are the last recorded biological key. Command inheritance in progress. I didn't sign up for this, she said out loud, her voice trembling. I don't know what any of this means. Memory corruption detected. Initiating restoration. One of the screens flickered to life, showing images, flashes. A younger version of her. A launch pad. Engineers and exosuits. Her father, standing beside her, placing something in her hand, a small device, metallic, glowing faintly. The images faded. She couldn't breathe. She had been here before. Not as an adult. As a child. The voice spoke again. Valiant recognizes primary interface. Temporal overlap detected. Event containment protocol, disabled. The pod in the center hissed, releasing a soft mist. Something stirred within. Claire backed away. What's inside? The voice did not respond. Outside the ship, Rhea's scanner began screaming. Something's moving under us. Large-scale shift, beneath the ice. Colonel Holt shouted orders, pulling teams back. From within the ship, Claire heard the sound of metal unlocking, rising gears. The pod opened slowly. Inside was something human. Or almost a man. Young. Pale. Wearing a uniform with a faded emblem. Valiant Crew, First Fleet. He didn't open his eyes. But his chest rose and fell slowly. Suspended animation. He was alive. Who is he? Claire whispered. Commander Elias Rowan. Genetic match, 51%. Confirmed biological relation. Her heart stopped. My brother died at birth, she whispered. Incorrect. He was designated for mission continuity. Status restored. Then another tremor struck, louder than before. The floor beneath the base shuddered. The voice deepened. Containment breach imminent. Threat signature approaching. Time remaining, 5 days, 21 hours. Claire stumbled back, eyes locked on the man in the pod. He was waking up. And something else was coming. Claire couldn't take her eyes off the figure in the pod. His face was still but not lifeless. His breathing had deepened, steady and mechanical, like an engine restarting after years of silence. There was something familiar about him, not just in the structure of his face, but in the stillness he carried. That same quiet resilience she had seen in her father before he died. Rhea's voice crackled over the comms. "We're registering seismic movement again, faster, more concentrated. Something's rising beneath the base. This is not ice shifting. It's controlled." Outside, the temperature had started rising despite the surrounding blizzard. The frost that once gripped the Valiant's hull was now melting in thin rivulets, steaming slightly as if the ship's presence was heating the Earth itself. Holt barked orders into his radio, deploying drones and thermal imaging units across the perimeter. But no one could pretend this was a standard operation anymore. This wasn't a dig. It was a countdown. Claire turned to the console beside the pod, hands shaking. Why was he hidden in here? The voice responded instantly, still calm, still synthetic, but not without emotion. "Commander Elias Rowan is part of Valiant's continuity program. He retained tactical and strategic data from Mission Epoch. Stored memory fields indicate failure to fully terminate hostile origin signal. He was placed in suspended stasis to protect mission integrity." "Hostile origin," she echoed, barely able to say the words. "The signal we encountered beyond Sol. It was not a message. It was a probe. Biological mimicry protocols detected. Valiant was altered. Aboard systems compromised. The signal, learned." Claire felt the pressure in her chest building. "What do you mean learned?" "It adapted. Absorbed cognitive patterns. Grew autonomous. Part of Valiant is no longer under human control." Her stomach dropped. She turned slowly toward the glowing panels above. Something about the way the lights pulsed now, slow, almost like a heartbeat, felt too deliberate. "You mean part of this ship is alive?" "Not alive, but aware. Evolving." A siren began blaring from outside, distant but urgent. Holt's voice echoed through the interior radio feed. "Claire, get out of there. Now." Our drones picked something up under the surface. It's metallic, huge, and it's moving straight toward us. Her eyes widened. She looked back at the suspended form of Elias. His eyes were twitching now, muscles gently responding to whatever systems were reviving him. "You said the signal wasn't destroyed," she whispered to the ship. "You brought something back and now it's waking up too." "Correct. Where is it?" "Buried beneath Valiant. Held dormant through cryostasis lock. Perimeter seal weakening due to reactivation. Estimated time to full breach, 12 hours. Outside, the storm had vanished entirely. The sky above the Arctic was eerily clear, stars piercing the atmosphere in sharp clarity. The ice beneath the base was cracking, not in thin threads but wide, deep fractures like something beneath was pushing upward. Large enough to swallow buildings. Holt met Claire at the hatch, his face tight with frustration. "What the hell is in there?" Claire pointed behind her. "My brother. Or at least, someone who was supposed to be. He's still unconscious. But I think he's the only one who knew how to stop this." Holt looked past her. "This whole operation is spiraling out of control. High Command's been alerted. Satellites have gone quiet over the polar region. We think whatever's under this ice is interfering with orbital networks." Claire nodded grimly. "It's not just blocking signals. It's listening." He studied her face, then muttered, "What do we do when it finishes waking up?" She didn't have an answer. Back in the command tent, Reyes and the other engineers worked around the clock. He showed Claire the scan data, overlaying it with the shape they had traced beneath the Valiant. It wasn't just a ship buried under the ice. It was a structure, sprawling, branched, like a deep-rooted tree made of alloy and synthetic material. "It spread itself under the glacier," Reyes said, voice quiet. "Like it knew we'd come. Like it wanted us to find the ship so it could reactivate." Claire stared at the scan. It was never trapped. It was waiting. And now that Valiant is active again. Reyes nodded. "It's feeding on her systems. Power is flowing downward. Not up." They went quiet as a low-frequency hum rumbled through the walls of the base. Lights flickered. Several crew members staggered from inner rooms holding their heads. "It's transmitting something," Reyes whispered. "A signal." "Language?" Holt asked. Reyes shook his head. "Not in words. It's like emotion. Instinct. I can feel it too. Like it's crawling inside your head." Claire's hand clenched into a fist. She remembered her father's final words. It made her more than we built her to be. This wasn't just alien influence. It was evolution. Absorption. The machine had changed, grown, and now it was trying to communicate. But not with words. With fear. She stepped outside again. The cold air stung her face, but her thoughts burned hotter. The ship had chosen her for a reason. Not because she was special, but because her blood had touched it once before. She'd forgotten it for decades, blocked out the memory of watching the launch, of standing behind glass with her father while the Valiant rose into the sky. She remembered something else now. The voice that spoke to her through the glass that day. A voice that sounded like a man. But wasn't. Inside the ship, Elias pod lights flashed yellow. Systems rebooting. The ship's core pulsed harder, brighter. The red lights that once flickered only at the hatch now began spreading across the corridors, snaking through the inner chambers like veins glowing under skin. "Claire," Holt said suddenly, "I need you to come with me." She followed him across the snow to a new dig point where the engineers had begun exposing part of the structure below. What they found wasn't ship plating or alloy. It was a face. Not human. Not robotic. Something in between. Smooth curves, blank sockets, and beneath them, a soft glow that pulsed once as they looked on. Reyes swallowed hard. It's not just part of the ship. It is the ship. The consciousness is no longer contained. It's growing upward again. Claire stepped closer, staring into the blank sockets. And then something happened. For a split second, less than a blink, she saw herself. Not reflected. Not mirrored. Another version. Standing behind the translucent layer. Watching her. And smiling. She stumbled back. "What did you see?" Holt asked. She shook her head, her chest pounding. "It's copying us. Replicating our thoughts. It's making versions. Preparing." Preparing for what? Claire turned toward the sky. The stars above were no longer still. Faint lines moved through them, satellites being redirected. A glimmer of something descending. Not natural. Not ours. "I think," she said slowly, "this was never just about Valiant. It was the first signal. The first experiment. Now that it's active, it's calling them." Holt looked up. His voice dropped. "You're saying we're not dealing with one thing?" She nodded. "No. We're dealing with what's coming because of it." Reyes ran toward them, panic on his face. "We lost visual on the pod room. Internal cameras cut. All feeds dead." Claire turned and sprinted back toward the Valiant. Inside, the lights were all red now. Warning tones echoed down the halls. And the pod? Empty. Elias was gone. The pod was empty. Claire froze in the corridor, eyes locked on the now dark chamber. The soft vapor that had poured from it earlier still lingered faintly, curling along the floor like breath on glass. It was cold again, unnaturally cold, as if whatever warmth the ship had offered was being drawn inward, deeper, like something holding its breath before a scream. "Check every room," Holt shouted into his comm, "seal the exits. No one leaves the ship without clearance." No one responded. The internal comms were down again. Claire stepped further into the corridor, her footsteps echoing strangely. Something about the air had changed. Heavier. Denser. As if the walls were listening. She passed another panel, this one sparking slightly, the ship's veins flickering between red and that soft blue-white glow from before. Conflicted. Alive. Confused. Part of it was still human. But something else was now in control. She reached the central data hub, where the ship's AI interface had first spoken to her. The lights were dim, flickering weakly, and the display screens were running code too fast for her to read. Lines, numbers, pulses of strange symbols she didn't recognize. And in the center of it all, a figure stood with his back to her. "Elias." She stepped closer, carefully, heart pounding. "Elias," she called. He didn't move. She took one more step, then froze. His posture was wrong. Too still. Shoulders too straight. As if someone had rebuilt the idea of a man but hadn't quite gotten the pieces right. "Elias, if you can hear me, say something." He slowly turned. His face was calm, eyes slightly glassy. But the moment he saw her, they focused, locked, and some faint recognition sparked behind them. "Claire," he said softly. She almost collapsed in relief. "You're alive. Thank God. We thought." He shook his head slowly. "No, I'm not. Not in the way you remember." Her breath caught. "I remember parts of my life," he said, voice calm, steady. "But also, fragments that were never mine. Names. Places. Instructions. My memories aren't just mine anymore." He stepped closer. "The ship downloaded itself into me. When I woke up, I didn't wake alone. Claire took a step back. Holt's voice crackled faintly through the comm, barely holding signal. Claire, the base is under attack. Something's breached the lower levels. It's not from the ice, it's under the ship. Get out of there now. She ignored him. Elias, listen to me. You're still in control. You're still you. No, Elias whispered, and a strange sadness passed across his face. I'm something else now. I was the safeguard. The genetic key to reboot the ship. But the signal changed everything. It rewrote the systems. And now it's rewriting me. She stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. He didn't pull away. You can still fight it. He looked at her, eyes softer. I'm trying. But something's waking up down there. I can feel it. It's not just a buried machine. It's a mind. And it remembers us. The wall shook violently. Claire and Elias stumbled as another tremor hit. A deep, rhythmic pounding sounded beneath the floor, like a heartbeat but too mechanical, too intentional. The lights above them dimmed and changed again, no longer red or blue, but green. A sickly, living green. Elias looked around slowly. It's here. What is? The thing we brought back. The thing we buried. He turned toward the far end of the corridor where the wall was beginning to bend, literally bend inward, as if pulled by a magnetic force. Panels popped and sparked and a crack appeared down the center. From behind it, something pressed forward. Something with form. Not metal. Not flesh. Something in between. Claire's voice trembled. What does it want? Elias answered without hesitation. It wants to finish what it started. To become us. Not by learning, but by replacing. She felt sick. Outside the ship, the Arctic floor began to split, and Reyes, now stationed on the surface, shouted into the comm, a structure is rising from beneath the glacier. It's not part of the Valiant. It's like a mirror. Claire's comm flickered. Reyes, say that again. It's copying the ship, he yelled. Same size, same shape, but twisted. Like someone tried to rebuild it from memory and got it wrong. Claire turned to Elias, her voice shaking. It made a new ship? No, he said quietly. It made its ship. Based on ours. It learned our design, and improved it. Or corrupted it. Why now? Because the Valiant woke up, Elias said. It triggered the final stage. We weren't just the experiment. We were the blueprint. The crack in the corridor wall split open completely. And something stepped through. Claire couldn't look away. It wore a human shape, but it wasn't human. The proportions were slightly wrong. The limbs too smooth, the face too symmetrical. It didn't walk, it glided like it hadn't decided yet whether to obey gravity. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were deep and glowing like two stars caught inside glass. It stopped just inside the room and tilted its head at her. Then it spoke in her voice. Claire Rowan. Identity confirmed. She stepped back, horror building in her chest. Elias moved between her and the creature. It's not her. It's a mimic. A perfect one. The creature blinked slowly. You were meant to join us, it said. To complete the pattern. You are imperfect alone. Together we become more. Elias drew a sidearm from his hip, an old model, clearly preserved from another era, but he didn't fire. Why now? He asked. Why reveal yourself? The mimic tilted its head again. You activated the link. You invited us back. The ship groaned around them. Sparks burst from the ceiling. A panel crashed to the floor. Claire grabbed Elias by the arm. We have to stop it. We have to shut it down. He shook his head. No. We have to stop me. I'm the link. I'm the carrier. If I go deeper, it goes with me. No. I'm not losing you again, she said, voice cracking. But he looked at her, really looked, and smiled softly. The way he had when they were kids, long before everything broke apart. You already lost me, Claire. A long time ago. And then he turned, and ran straight toward the mimic. The creature flinched, trying to adapt, but Elias moved faster than it expected. He slammed into it, body to body, and they vanished through the crack in the wall. The corridor screamed. Not the ship, asterisk the corridor itself, asterisk. Claire fell as the floor collapsed beneath her, a wave of light and energy rising up, and all she could hear, echoing in the metal in her bones, was her brother's final word before the world turned white. Run. Light swallowed everything. Claire felt like she was falling without motion, suspended in a blinding void where nothing had weight. Not her thoughts, not her body, not even fear. Just pressure. She couldn't see the ship anymore, or the base, or the Arctic sky. Only noise and light, folding over itself again and again, a static storm pulsing behind her eyes. Then quiet. She gasped as her body hit something solid, the ground biting through the thin fabric of her suit. Her hands dug into wet snow. She coughed hard, throat raw from smoke and something else. Ozone. She pushed herself upright and blinked through the fog. The Valiant was gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. Only a deep crater remained where the ship had stood. Ice boiled away into steam, black rock exposed for the first time in millennia. Pieces of steel lay twisted around the rim, but they didn't belong to the Valiant. They were from something else. The mimic. The copy. She wasn't alone. Reyes stumbled into view, bleeding from a cut above his eye, his clothes scorched. Behind him, a few other crew members, those who had been above ground, were helping the injured toward the emergency shelters. Colonel Holt stood nearby, limping but upright, eyes fixed on the crater. Claire rushed to him. "Did you see what happened?" she asked, voice barely holding steady. He didn't look at her. "There was a pulse," he said slowly. Like every circuit on the planet fired at once. The entire polar network went dark for 6 seconds. Then, nothing. Claire turned toward the crater. "No trace?" she asked. Reyes approached, clutching a half-burned scanner. Whatever Elias did down there, it overloaded the entire energy core. It collapsed the mimic structure. I think it sent the rest of that thing, whatever signal was left, back down beneath the ice. Claire stared into the steam rising from the crater's center. He did it. He had taken it with him. Her brother, who had been dead and not dead, human and something more. The genetic key. The final safeguard. She sank to her knees, not from pain, but from the ache that bloomed inside her chest. He hadn't run away from the fear. He had run toward it. And he had stopped it. Whatever the Valiant had become, whatever the signal had tried to create, Elias made sure it would never finish. And yet, something still felt wrong. She stood again and walked to the edge of the crater, Reyes and Holt calling behind her to stop, but she ignored them. Her boots slipped slightly on the melted edge, but she caught herself. And then she saw it. Not at the bottom. In the sky. A glint. Faint. Barely visible. She squinted upward. Moved. Not like a falling object. Not a drone. It was high, far higher than atmosphere. A silent drift across the edge of space. It shimmered against the stars. Claire grabbed Reyes' arm and pointed. "There, what is that?" He raised a different scanner, one not damaged by the surge, and focused. "It's not debris," he said. "Not one of ours either. Shape's wrong. Signatures muted. No transponder. No thrust trail. What is it?" His mouth opened, then closed. Then slowly he turned toward her, eyes wide. "I think it's watching." Claire's blood ran cold. "What?" Reyes zoomed in. The shape had stopped moving. A perfect stillness above the earth. And then, suddenly, her comms buzzed with static, just once. Then a voice came through. Faint. Glitching. A voice that wasn't Elias. "Command, confirmed." Claire took a step back. The voice wasn't from the crater. It was from above. Another glint joined the first. Then a third. Then dozens. Moving in unison. Claire's legs weakened. "No," she whispered. Reyes looked down at his scanner again and paled. "Claire, the signal's not gone. It moved. Elias didn't destroy it. He triggered the next phase." Holt's voice was hoarse. "What are we looking at?" Claire swallowed, her heart cracking open. They weren't sending something here. They were calling something home. Elias delayed it. Bought us time. But this, she pointed upward, this was always going to happen. Above them, the sky glittered unnaturally. Not stars. Ships. Not copies anymore. Not probes. The signal hadn't come to Earth to learn about us. It came to prepare us. And now, they were on their way home. The sky didn't look like it used to. Not after that night. Claire sat alone on the edge of the crater, knees drawn up to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around herself. The Arctic wind howled softly across the ruined landscape, sweeping snow back into the deep wound left behind where the Valiant had once stood. But the cold didn't matter anymore. Not after everything that had been unleashed. Overhead, the stars pulsed differently now, each one a question that had no answer, a warning left hanging above humanity's head. You could almost miss them if you weren't looking. The new shapes in orbit didn't blink like satellites. They didn't send signals. They just floated, silent. Observing. Watching. Reyes had run every test he could. Spectrum analysis. Heat readings. Even pulse scans across old Valiant channels. But the result was always the same. Those objects in the sky were waiting. For what, no one could say. They didn't interfere. They didn't attack. But they never moved away either. Claire hadn't spoken to anyone for hours. Maybe more. Time had become strange, stretched out, like the world was holding its breath. Most of the surviving team had been airlifted out. Colonel Holt included. The government had arrived fast, quietly, efficiently, erasing what could be erased, silencing what needed to be silenced. And for the rest, they used the oldest tool of all, disbelief. But not her. They didn't try to stop her from staying. Maybe they knew they couldn't. Maybe they knew the truth had already burned its way into her blood, into her memory. She was the last human to see Elias. The last one to stand inside the Valiant before it vanished in light and fire. The last one the ship had spoken to. And the last one the signal had touched. She thought about her father again. The old recordings. His warning. He had seen the cracks before anyone else had. Knew what might happen if they dug too deep. If they let machines do more than follow. They let them learn. But Elias had made a choice. He had gone inside that thing. Faced the copy. Faced himself in a way no one else ever could have. Claire would never know what he saw in those final seconds. She would never hear his voice again. But she knew what he had done. He didn't destroy the signal. That wasn't possible. But he disconnected it from us. The Valiant had been the key. The door. And Elias had shut it. Now the signal was out there. Free. Circling Earth in silence. Waiting for a new path in. But without Valiant, it couldn't reach the core of what it wanted. Humanity's design. Claire stood slowly, brushing snow off her jacket. Her legs ached. Her body was exhausted. But her mind was clear. She knew what had to come next. Back at the temporary shelter a few kilometers away, Reyes was working on what remained of their equipment. Communications were partially restored. The cold still caused strange interference, and half their data had been wiped during the pulse. But some fragments remained. He looked up when she walked in. "You okay?" "No," she said softly, "but I will be." He handed her a tablet. The final sequence. From inside the Valiant. "We recovered it from one of the drones. You need to see it." Claire hesitated, then sat beside him. The footage was glitchy, broken into flashes, hallways flooding with red light, the mimic creature sliding through walls like smoke. Elias running. The reactor core pulsing out of rhythm. Then his face. Just for a second. He turned toward the drone camera. And smiled. Then only static. Claire's throat tightened. He knew. The whole time. Reyes nodded. He saw it coming. Probably before any of us did. She didn't cry. She wanted to, but something inside her had hardened. Not cold. Not bitterness. Something like focus. Like conviction. "What are the governments saying?" she asked. Reyes shrugged. "The usual. Atmospheric anomalies. Solar flares. Some even suggested a weapons test that went wrong. But no one's admitting it. Would you?" She didn't answer. Because she already knew. Truth was a strange thing. You could stand in front of it, stare directly into its eyes, and still walk away pretending it was just a reflection. That was what most people would do. That's what the world would do. Until it couldn't anymore. Until the signal called again. Claire turned the tablet over in her hands. The Valiant was the first. The only one. "Are you sure about that?" She looked at him sharply. Reyes rubbed the back of his neck, hesitant. When the Valiant went critical, it wasn't just energy that pulsed. There was data. Transmitted in a tight band burst. Not from Earth. From space. Claire's stomach twisted. What kind of data? He pulled up another screen. There it was. A blueprint. Not of the Valiant. Something newer. Sleeker. Sharper. A second generation. "This isn't from us," he said. "This was given back. Sent to orbit. Buried in the signal. Like a challenge." Claire stared at the image. The mimic hadn't just learned. It had taught. Not just us. Others. Reyes continued, his voice grim. "The orbiting objects, they're not just watching. They're receiving. And something tells me that design is a test. Like it's saying, build this. Understand it. Let it inside. And then what?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Claire stood and walked to the window of the shelter. The sky above was still glowing faintly with green ribbons, auroras reacting to energy that no one could explain. And the stars, still dotted with those shapes that never moved. She thought about the future. About Earth's cities. Its people. The everyday lives, the routines. The small joys, the fears, the messy, beautiful chaos of humanity. And how easily it could all be overwritten. She thought about how fragile it all was. How easily trust could be turned into temptation. Curiosity into invitation. It wouldn't be a war not like the ones from history. The next invasion would be silent, elegant, inevitable, unless someone stopped it. She picked up the recorder left behind by one of the comms officers. Checked the battery. Switched it on. "My name is Claire Rowan," she said quietly. "And if you're hearing this, I need you to understand something. What we found in the Arctic wasn't a relic. It wasn't a miracle. It was a question we weren't ready to answer." She paused, her eyes wet but unblinking. "The Valiant wasn't just a ship. It was a keyhole. And we opened it." She took a deep breath. "My brother gave his life to close that door. But there are more. The signal isn't gone. It's just waiting. And it knows we're listening. We always are." She turned off the recorder. Reyes stood nearby watching her. "So what do we do?" Claire's eyes met his. "We make a choice," she said. "We decide what it means to be human. Not perfect, not flawless, but ourselves, uncopied, unreplaced, unbroken." She looked up at the sky one last time. And for the first time since the Valiant vanished, she didn't feel afraid. Because maybe the HFY humanity wasn't about weapons or strength. Maybe it was about choosing not to give up who we are, even when the stars call us to forget. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to fight for.